athletes have often used their voices and led the way in matters of racial justice. At this tipping point for our country, athletes are once again speaking out, using their platform to look back and look ahead, as they will this evening in Race and Sports in America Conversations. Welcome to Lake Tahoe. I'm your host, Damon Hack. Today we will feature two roundtable discussions. In just a little bit, I'll be joined by Steph Curry, Del Curry, Vince Carter, and Notre Dame football coach Brian Kelly. Right now, I'm pleased to introduce two-time Pro Bowl tight end Kyle Rudolph, 2007 AL Cy Young Award winner CC Sabathia, two-time Pro Bowl defensive end Justin Tuck, and the 2007 National League MVP Jimmy Rollins. Thanks for joining us this evening. Jimmy, I want to start with you. It was a year ago when we gathered here on the shores of Lake Tahoe in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. I'm curious, in your mind, where do things stand in society? What are you pleased with? What are you concerned with?
Awareness is probably the biggest thing that has come from it. Not necessarily a lot of change. Since George Floyd, there have been a number of, police killings. And, each case is different. You have, one side saying one thing, the other side saying something else, and then everyone else chipping in on social media, their feelings and thoughts, as they should be. So I'm happy for awareness, but there hasn't really been change. There are no policy changes. One thing I talked about last year was prison reform, and in Philadelphia we have a new DA, and we're seeing the things that he's doing personally, going back, looking at cases that were corrupt, or at least allegedly corrupt, having them reviewed and finding the guys innocent. Guys with 25, 35 year terms are walking free when they've been claiming innocence all this time. So that's one step in one city, but until it's, policy, it takes a brave soul to step in and say, I want to do the right thing.
Kyle, how about for you? You were living in Minnesota when George Floyd was killed. You're now a member of the New York Football Giants. In your perspective over the last year, what have you learned? What have you seen?
I think the biggest thing for us, essentially being on ground zero, right there in our backyard where it happened. As an organization, we felt like we had to set the standard. And thankfully, our owners, the Wilf family, our GM, Rick Spielman, and Mike Zimmer, the head coach, it wasn't something that we had to just, I mentioned this last year, it wasn't like a knee-jerk reaction where, hey, we got to be active, we got to start making these changes. We had a committee for 3 years prior to that, and we were in the community on the ground with kids, making those changes. And one of the things that I constantly spoke of was, we can't get discouraged. This is not something that we're going to change overnight. And if we let these instances discourage us, because we're not seeing the change that we want to see, we're not going to get there. And I think that was one of the things I was most proud of for our team is, although we have been working for 3 years to make sure that something like that never happened again, it didn't stop us from, all right, now we really got to put our boots on the ground and we got to get in the community and do the best we can. Unfortunately, in the middle of a pandemic, that's hard to do. But it's still, there were ways where we can bring awareness and get around these kids virtually to make sure that we didn't lose any of the momentum we created the 3 years prior.
How about for you, CC? You have an autobiography, a memoir coming out till the end. You talk about being a black baseball player and how incredibly complicated it is to speak on issues of race, especially in the MLB. What have you seen over the last year that has encouraged you or discouraged you?
You know what? In baseball, it's actually, gotten better, to be honest. We formed the Players Alliance in the last year with myself and Jimmy, our members in it. It's 150 current and former black players in the league, just trying to make change in our game and around our game. So for us in the MLB, since we have been speaking up, I feel like it has gotten better, but there is still where, there's some teams that don't have a black player, or there is teams where it's one guy in the locker room, and that's a problem. So until we can, get the numbers to where they were when we were kids watching the game, and why it encouraged me to go play the game, I'll be out here working and in my community try to make sure kids are playing baseball.
How about the fact that some people don't want athletes to speak at all on these issues, Justin? What is your perspective on that in terms of the role an athlete should play in society?
Well, I grew up in Alabama, and I still remember the Charles Barkley commercial, right, where, I'm not a role model. But I feel like the platform that God has given us, right, the talents that we have, the influence that we can have from not only the youth, but also, the parents as well. And just, I think, when you think about something Jimmy said, the awareness, right, when sports can be a median to making people aware of where CeCe's from, where Kyle's from, what our different perspectives are, right, where Jimmy's from. I think that makes the world a little bit smaller, and we figure out, and hopefully we figure out, we're not that different, right? I bleed red just like Kyle does, even though on the outside you can see there's a lot of difference there, right? And as we continue to have these conversations, as we continue to have this awareness, as we continue to get in these uncomfortable conversations, right? I think sports plays a huge part of that, right? Because we have great platforms. Whatever MLB, NFL, NBA, whatever platform we have, it's such a huge platform for us to reach people and help them understand that, Justin Tuck from Kellyton, Alabama is not that much different from CeCe Sabathia from Vallejo. And I think as we continue to walk it that way, you'll start to see these changes that we're all talking about. You'll start to see people be a little bit more comfortable and have a little bit of an awareness of why my perspective might be a little different. Doesn't mean your perspective is wrong, but it opens us up to have a conversation to understand where people are coming from. I can't understand what it was like to grow up in this part if I don't listen to you, right? You can't understand what it is to be Justin Tucker if you don't listen to me. And as we continue to have those conversations, then I just believe and feel like we'll continue to walk this country and this world in the direction that I think we all want it to go.
What was it like growing up a son of the South?
I grew up on a pig farm, man. It was difficult, but it was a place where I had so much family around me, right? And I think for me personally, it gave me that support I needed, right? And then going off to New York City, right? Not having that support, but then football, having those veterans throughout whatever team it was, having that type of platform and support was similar to how I grew up, and that's kind of how I know I've watched CeCe and I watched Jimmy and what they've done with the Players Allowance. That's support, right? Because all of us come from different circles, all of us come from different walks of life. But I think at the end of the day, right, we're all trying to get to the same place, a place where I don't have to worry about my kids, because Justin Tuck lives in a prominent neighborhood, but I have these little black kids hanging out with these little white kids, and like if something goes on or something goes wrong, then there should be a equal pool of that support, white, black, brown, green, and different, right? And so for me, growing up in the South. Obviously, it was difficult in some perspectives, but it taught me about community. It taught me about support. And, I think given where I am in life, that's what I'm trying to, encourage for all the circles that I'm running in right now.
You worry about your kids?
I do. Like Tuck said, I mean, our kids live in the same area. And I have a 17-year-old that walks around with drip. He's got, his hair is twisted. So I do worry about him driving and, the different things, the encounters that he can have. That's just one of those things that you have to worry about when you have a little black or brown kid, that's driving and a kid that looks like him. So he's a bigger kid. So I do have those talks with him all the time. I have the talks with my 10-year-old, even my girls. But there's nothing that we can really do but just educate them and make sure that they're respectful if they do get pulled over and have these encounters, and just make it home.
Jimmy, one of the things you said last year was that you were pulled over, had guns drawn on you. As a member of the Philadelphia Phillies, a prominent player, one of the best in the league. Have you had similar situations as a young person, or even as a New York Yankee being pulled over or driving while black, as the term goes?
Yeah, I got pulled over a bunch of times as being a Yankee, but the only time I can never really remember having a gun pulled on me was by the police when I was a kid. When I was 13 or 14 years old, in the back of a car with my cousins, and I had the guns drawn on me. Like, that was one of the only times I can remember, guns being pulled on me. So, growing up, where I did in the Crest and Vallejo, those are just encounters that you are going to come across.
Yeah.
Some people say that they're weary of these conversations, Kyle. They're tired of them. The Pew Research Center, for example, says outside of the black community, people are done or at least getting tired of talking about Black Lives Matter and different movements. How do you combat fatigue? How do we keep these issues at the forefront where many in the community might be saying, you know, I'm over this now?
I think it goes back to my point prior. Like, we can't get discouraged. This isn't something that's going to get fixed overnight. Last year, I brought up the example of, I think I was like 10 or 11 years old, and I remember growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we had the riots with Timothy Thomas. And here we are, 20 years later. I now have 4-year-old twin girls and a 2-year-old son, and my kids went through the same thing that I went through in Cincinnati. And it's like, I pray every night that when my kids have 4-year-olds and 2-year-olds, they're not experiencing the same thing then. And that's the biggest thing is, we can't get discouraged. We have to keep fighting each and every day, raising the awareness, changing policies so that when our kids have kids, this is no longer an issue. And it's not a conversation that has to be had. I remember Coach Lynn talking about how with both of his boys, you had to have that conversation. That's not a conversation I ever have to have with my kids, and that's not right.
And like you said, to go along with that, that's what, when we talk about privilege, that's privilege, not having to worry about having that conversation, being able to say, well, I don't want to learn about this now. I don't want my kids to learn about
we ain't got a choice.
the term of the day. That's privilege. We don't have an option. When you're anything other than white, you don't really have an option. You have to be educated about what to do when the police pull you over, how to behave. They're the professionals, they have the gun, but you're supposed to be the one calm when you're trying to figure out, did I make an infraction? What happened? Am I getting pulled over just because I'm black? All those things have to go through your head. And we don't get a chance to opt out. We just don't. We live it, breathe it every single day. Doesn't matter what level of success you have. I've been pulled over in Philadelphia. Fortunately, they recognized me, slow down a little bit, talk about the game, and on my way. But if I'm not in Philadelphia, I'm not treated that way. And that's something that every time we step outside of our boundaries, that we know, there's a good chance that I get pulled over, something happens, they'll recognize me, okay, they're going to treat me different. Once we get outside that circle, it's like we're fair game.
And to that point, right, I'm from Alabama, and God has blessed all of us to be able to kind of move our social status to wherever it is, right? But like, my biggest fear, like you say, they pull you over and then they recognize, oh, that's Jimmy. I've been pulled over many times where they recognize, oh, that's Justin Tuck driving a nice car, right? Mm-hmm. But what happens when, we're gonna send, hopefully, we're gonna send our kids to great schools. We're gonna have, our kids driving nice cars, whatever it may be. What happens when Jason and Jonah are driving that nice car in that nice neighborhood and they pull over and the cops don't recognize them as, oh, that's Justin's kid, mm-hmm. right? That's just another black kid, and like that's been eating alive at me, right? Because I think a lot of times that is the scenario, and you got to have the conversation with my kid. My sons, they know that they're Justin Tuck's kid, and they've come somewhat, aware of some of the things that people say and like some of the things they can quote unquote get away with. But in that scenario, you got to have conversations with them to make them understand that because you're around certain people, right, and because you're in certain neighborhoods, and because you have certain privileges in that regard, right, doesn't excuse you from the fact that you're still a black or brown kid, right? And those are hard conversations to have.
It's and I haven't figured out. Understand that because these are just my friends. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like that. Now, I don't have to. My oldest was like, we don't have that conversation because these are just my boys. Like, no, I do because you're not the same, son.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that sometimes they don't even understand that. And even better to Kyle's point, like talking about his kids and what you went through in Cincinnati and then your kids going through it. Like, I was out protesting and walking through Brooklyn and doing all these different things with my kids. But it was my 9-year-old that came to me. He was like, Dad, are we gonna go out and protest, or are we just gonna, put stuff on Instagram and, pretend like, we're doing something from the couch, like my 9-year-old. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, we need to go protest tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? And it just, when we were out there, I felt good, but it made me sad that my grandparents were walking and protesting about the same stuff that we're yelling, and it's the same things that we're yelling. No justice, no peace, say his name, all these different things. And it's not my 9-year-old saying it. So it just made me it makes me sad to even think about, that our kids are still even going through the same stuff that our grandparents went through.
And yet there's a part of society that does not want to discuss race. They want a colorblind society. Everyone would like a colorblind society, but there's also a push that says, hey, you know, I don't want my kids to learn about the Tulsa race riots from 100 years ago. I don't want them to learn about the intersection of race and U.S. law. So how do you kind of keep that in the forefront where some people don't want those things to be taught in school? They don't want to talk about race. They think it's racist to bring up race, Kyle.
You know, for me, I was fortunate. My parents sent me to a private Catholic school all the way through growing up, and I had an Ohio history class. Great, I learned about the state that I grew up in, but it wasn't until I was in the NFL and I had those meetings with our, social justice committee and the Minnesota Vikings that I learned about all this stuff from my teammates that went through it. And until you learn about it, until you educate yourself, there is no empathy. Like, yeah, you could say I feel for you or I'm sympathetic, but that's not going to change this until you talk to people, until you hear their stories, until you hear what they've gone through, and you can kind of experience it through their shoes. Because, as y'all mentioned, I'm never going to experience this stuff personally. It'll just never happen. My kids will never experience it personally because of that privilege. But when you talk to people and you hear their stories and you can then become empathetic, now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. And you have to want to know the truth. I mean, we've all been caught doing something. Parents, my dad. If you just tell the truth, you won't be in trouble. But we still try to find ways to hide the truth because we think by telling the truth and exposing what really happened, we're going to be in more trouble. But when you tell the truth, you find your way out of it. You can start to heal. You can get out of trouble by telling the truth. Okay, that's fine. Don't do it again. But we want to say it never happened. Yeah. In our history books, it never happened. These people were barbarians. We came in, we civilized them. Well, they had a whole civilization before you guys were here that worked for them. Not everything has to be done one way. It was different. It wasn't, European. And you wanted this land. My grandmother, rest in peace, Native American Chickasaw from Oklahoma. She went through that. I've seen pictures of her, just on the reservation, and was just like, that was her then, and looking at her now, and just knowing the story that they had to go through. They weren't, just escorted off of property. They weren't just pushed. They were murdered, killed, poisoned. Some were paid off and tricked, think they were going to get something for something else. You can't hide that. That doesn't make you bad. That's just things that have happened in the past to learn from. The only way you can right your wrongs is by trying to make them right. And if you keep them under the carpet, in denial, saying I'm tired of talking about it, how do you make change?
Have you received any backlash, any of you, in the last year when you've tried to raise your voice? Or how much backlash have you received?
When I post something, I tell my friends and family, look, if I post something, I'm not doing it to read the comments. I said it, it's out there, and that's that. They'll call me, hey, Jim, hey, just let me know. Like, what you talking about? Man, they up there talking crazy, cuz. I'm just like, you think I said what I said, I believe what I say, and that's that. Yeah. On to the next post. The next post might be the pictures here in Tahoe. Yep. It's just when it needs to be said, say it. People are going to feel a certain way about it. Change is never easy.
I think it makes it more comfortable that a lot of more athletes are speaking up, though. Like a lot of people are using their Instagram and social media to speak up about social justice and different things in the community. So it makes it easier that it's not just you getting the comments or me or whoever, Ray or whatever, you can read it on everybody's page. So that makes it easier, I guess, to deal with.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I think the good comments outweigh the bad, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. I've seen multiple. I mean, there's no number to this, but I've seen many of people who will, like Kyle said, won't understand where I'm coming from, won't necessarily understand the post. And they'll say, like, how can I research this? Where can I find out more information? How can I be additive, right? I think that's positive, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of it being a dismissing of, that's your problem. No, this is American history. This is America's problem.
What if someone says, well, you're an athlete, you're a millionaire. Well, what are you complaining about?
We didn't grow up athletes and millionaires. We grew up in situations that we're talking about, and that's why we can speak on them, and that's why we're experts in these situations, and we're not just athletes. We're literally experts in these situations because I know where he grew up. I know where he grew up. They know where I grew up. So we're experts. Like I'm speaking from experience and facts, that stuff that happened to me.
Yep.
I almost got started cussing right there. Like, stuff that happened to me, you know what I'm saying? So I'm an expert on this subject, period.
And on top of that, it's like we are also kind of like the folklorists of our communities, right? Where we can help them understand what it looks like, right? From both sides, from the perspective of the good, the bad, the different. Every white man is not a bad person.
Nope.
Right? Every I have many white friends who have come to me and like, listen, I had no clue when George Floyd happened and a lot of other things. They're like, and that exposure of that, but also that opening up of those uncomfortable conversations. They're like, listen, I thought I took Black history. I took Black history in high school and college. I thought I understood. I had no clue, right? And some of the intimate conversations I've had with white people just be like, listen, I don't understand, but I'm here to listen. I won't have the answers. No one has the answers. But just having that conversation where you can have people that truly are listening to you, truly listening to your plot, truly trying to understand how they can be, not trying to fix the problem, right? Just being someone like, there's a time, like everyone looks at us as these big bad athletes. No, I need a shoulder to cry on sometimes. There's some questions that my wife might ask me, my son might ask me, and I think I'm this smart guy, I'm this tough guy. I have no answer for that. And being able to have people that I can go back and be like, listen, I need someone to talk to. I don't need you to answer me. I don't need you to, give me, the ninth wonder of the world. No, I just need someone who I can put these problems on for a second. But I'll take them back from you in a minute, because that's my role as a Black man, as a Black successful man. I grew up in the church. I grew up in my dad literally telling me day in and day out, you have all this talent, but with that comes so much responsibility. So much responsibility. And this is just one of the plots. This is just it. When I go back home and people ask me about this and that and the third, I have to find a way to muster up the strength to be that representation of what we see in this world right now and give them some hope.
Yep.
And I'm sure it's the same way for all of us.
And no matter what, we always have to be good. How you doing? I'm good.
Yeah.
Really, you like, man, erase that. I'm good. And keep it simple. Because if you're bad and they're seeing you at the top having it all, it's like, well, my life got to be at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
So we play a role whether we want to or not. And one thing that Tuck touched on is that same way I've had white friends come to me, and it's like they have accepted that when we complain, we are not playing a black card. Like George Floyd was like, no, this really happens. Because I know if I had a fake $20 bill, they probably just would have took it like, what are you doing? And you walk out the store, But
and that, to your point, like all of my white friends that I'm really close with, I even got even more closer having these intimate conversations. So we even got better relationships because we had these uncomfortable conversations of, they didn't know, or these different things are like, teammates would hear me come in literally to the clubhouse and complain about getting pulled over. And where I'm driving, and I'm like, why'd I get pulled over? And guys would be like, well, I remember you complaining about getting pulled over that day, but just never crossed my mind. Well, now you understand.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, a lot of teammates that, that we had these conversations, I got closer to now, and in the aftermath of this.
How much backlash have you received? I'm curious from the white community, if at all.
I've said this since the very beginning. What is right, and what is wrong, and I will always stand against what is wrong. I think the biggest thing is educating the white community that doesn't have the relationship. It's easy for me. I can go in the locker room and I can ask 52 other guys, and I can be empathetic because there's all those situations I can learn from. But if I go to certain white communities, they can't learn from anything except for the news, the media, and we all know that's bad. You do not learn anything from there. So I feel a great responsibility to be a bridge to those communities. So I can now take what I've learned, the empathy that I've received from my teammates and other people that I've talked to, and pass it on. Because until it gets passed on from the black community to the white community, and then throughout the white community, we're not going to get anywhere.
Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic?
I'm optimistic because, again, I stand by the statement that what is right and what is wrong. And more people in this world are against what is wrong. And that's the bottom line. I believe in human nature, and it's just, again, it's educating, it's having these conversations, and I know these conversations aren't easy for these guys to have with white teammates and white friends, and they're really not easy as a white person to have with other white people because they don't want to hear it.
Why?
Because I think they don't see it. They've never experienced it. When you just live in an all-white community, again, that doesn't happen. Right. And it's like, no, like I literally just talked to a friend who told me, this happened to them personally. So I think that's the biggest thing is, out of sight, out of mind. Like, oh no, that doesn't happen because they don't ever see it.
JT, you optimistic?
I have to be. Like CC talked about it, right? His grandparents were marching and saying, the same things that we're saying here in 2020 and 2021, right? I think we do our families before us an injustice not being optimistic, right? All the things that so many people have fought for. And we have it good. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously there's a lot wrong with the world, but compared to my granddad, compared to my great granddad, my granddad was a sharecropper who worked 4 jobs, who walked back and forth, and then got home just in time to plow a field. I have it really good, so I have to be optimistic, especially knowing people like Kyle who are that extension of the narrative and the situations that we all are faced with. Yeah, I'm definitely optimistic, but I'm also pissed off. Like, just being really, really real with you. We're still at a place, and it's almost like a roller coaster where you kind of have these feels of like, okay, we're in a good spot, and then all of a sudden something happens and we're, right? Like that's a tough scenario. That's a tough scenario to live in. That's a tough scenario, and it's almost like I feel guilty in some perspectives, right? Because when I go back home, I see people struggling. I mean, I go to New York City, I see people struggling, and the amount of riches that we have in this country, in this world, it makes no sense to me. But I am optimistic. I am pissed off, but the anger that I feel from that other side of it is what keeps me going every day. Right? It's not like I'm waking up and like, we've arrived. No, I'm waking up like, okay, what are we doing today? Mm-hmm. What am I teaching my kids? What board seat am I trying to get on to help, change the narrative in that space, right? I'm in corporate America now. What CEO, what client am I gonna have I'm not sliding notes under the table. How am I poking people in places that truly have impact, that can make impact and make change? How am I doing that? And that's the pissed offness of where I am right now.
You understand those dual emotions of optimism and anger. Where do the scales fit for you?
It has to be optimistic for me, just because I have just the kids. Like I want, for me, I have to be optimistic just for their lives. For me, I mean, my 4 kids, I want them to be okay, and I'm gonna do everything I can in my power, whether it's through the Players Alliance, whether it's through personally, through my foundation, whatever, to make sure that this world is good for them, and so I have to be optimistic for them.
How about you, J-Ro?
I'm hopeful. I know I feel a lot better this year than I did last year. Mm-hmm. It was very heavy. It was just, and you're mad, and you don't even see anything positive out of it, other than just wanting something to be done, but that doesn't solve anything. 2 wrongs will never make a right. But if I had to go, optimistic or pessimistic, definitely more leaning towards optimistic. You have to be. You have to hope for the best. Kids, my wife gets mad, but I tell the truth. Well, you shouldn't expose them to certain things. Like, I water it down, but if they ask me, I am going to tell them. Yeah. They're not going to go through like, and not be aware. Anything can happen. They're 9. We could be driving. They get pulled over. There are times cars are behind us, and they're just like, that. The police are behind us. Are you in trouble? Or are you going to get pulled over? And it's like, no, they're out patrolling. Something happens. Daddy hasn't done anything. Just stay calm. I've been pulled over a number of times. I know how to act, but I don't want them to get in a situation, although they're kids, when something's wrong or bad has been deemed doing. We've seen police, they don't discriminate because of age. Everybody's in trouble till they figure it out. So when something happens, this is why. Not all police officers are bad, but there are some bad ones, and I do want you to be aware of that.
And going back on a point that I think Kyle made, maybe I made it, I forget, but like, that's more good in this world than it is bad. It just seems like the bad gets more press.
For sure.
Yeah.
So that's why, again, that's why I'm optimistic. I just feel like as we continue to have these conversations, if the bad group is this big, over time it's going to continue to shrink. You have to believe that, because then if you don't believe that, what are you fighting for? What are you marching for? What are we having this panel for? It's all for a facade if you don't believe that over time we're going to get there. Is it slower than what we all want it to be? Sure it is. Yeah, that's a given. But you have to be optimistic, because I think that wakes you up and wakes you up in the morning and puts your feet firm on the ground and gets you out the door running to what all of our hopes are. And I don't think anybody here thinks that we're going to solve this in our lifetimes. But if we can solve it in our kids' lifetime, then none of this is in vain. None of this is for naught. But yeah, I do think there's more good in this world than bad. I'll go to my grave thinking that. Yeah.
Gentlemen, appreciate your time and perspective in these important conversations. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dan.
Coming up next, Steph Curry, Del Curry, Vince Carter, and Brian Kelly. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Lake Tahoe for Race and Sports in America Conversations. I'm your host, Damon Hack, with our second panel of the evening, the head coach of Notre Dame football, Brian Kelly, 8-time NBA All-Star Vince Carter, a 16-year veteran of the NBA, Del Curry, and a 2-time NBA MVP, Steph Curry. Thanks for all of your time this evening. Steph, we sat on these shores 1 year ago in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. I'm curious, from your perspective, where do things stand in society? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? What do you see?
I mean, I'm always optimistic to start. I feel like if you don't have hope, you got two options: either hopeless or you have hope. And I choose to hopefully carry that spirit, that energy. And then I think in terms of the conversation in our country and the optimism around, it's a better vibe than last summer. Obviously, we went through hell pretty much. Last summer, obviously a pandemic and the killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many others. It sparked a new, I think, energy in our country, a new awareness and awakening of how we all can be accountable, no matter where you come from, no matter what your experience is, to step up. And I feel like that's carried through the election, this year, and I definitely choose to be optimistic about where we are, and especially people in positions of leadership and power. I think there's a widespread accountability to how we all, men and women can change things in their world, no matter how big their reach is.
Del, what's it been like for you to see your son have these conversations, I imagine similar to what you had during your prime?
Gives me great pride, admiration, and to know that the foundation and the platform that he's on, and to be able to say, hey, I can make a difference. People are listening when I talk. To have those conversations, to challenge people throughout the world to be better. And it takes a bold, confident guy to do that, to step out with and tell people what he believes in, how the world should be, how everyone should be treated. So to have that platform and to be able to speak, be articulate, and challenge people, it gives me great pride and admiration as a father.
Any sadness at all that these conversations have had to continue?
No, like Steph said, I think we're optimistic. I think once they stop, that's where you get stagnant. The conversation has to continue. I think we're in a better place, but nowhere near where we need to be. And to get where we want to be, those conversations have to be meaningful. They have to continue, and everybody must be involved.
It has to be uncomfortable. I want to say that. I want to jump in with what they're saying. It has to be uncomfortable. And I think when you're able to have uncomfortable conversations, I think everybody gets something out of them. And I'm, the older statesman, not, but in the game, and seeing you know, the players. Not even, I mean, you're an old guy now, considered to, sorry, take that on the chin, bro. But just seeing what the younger generation has done on the front lines, utilizing their platform, utilizing their voice, not just for themselves, but for others who are voiceless or feel like my voice won't be heard. They said, okay, well, let me help you amplify that by speaking for you and being in the forefront. And I mean, in your time, you didn't see guys do that.
Yeah.
We had our feelings about what we wanted to say, but we didn't feel like could we say it or had the confidence to say it. That's no more. Guys are stepping up and saying, hey, I'm going to say what's right, what I feel, and it's uncomfortable, and it's going to challenge people. And, you know, but like I said, what you've done, you know, for the game, utilizing your platform and not really caring about what other people say. I feel this is right. I feel like I'm going to say it, and it's going to help people, and hopefully I can change the narrative.
That's a generational thing too, because it took me a second to get there, where you know you're not going to please everybody. You're going to be a part of some polarizing conversations. But it's also why I am optimistic, is because you see our young people, and you say I'm old, I'll accept that. But our young people who, you know, watch us on the court, know, you know, what's happening in society, they're much more equipped and much more strong with their words and their stances, and they're much more enlightened at a younger age. And I feel like that is such a great thing to see, kind of this mass, you know, uprising of our young people and the voices that they have and the way that they're using their platforms. Coach, we talked about, you know, how they're using social media, how they're holding, you know, people in powerful, you know, positions accountable for their actions and things like that. We can talk about cancel culture and all that, but that's a real new wave of you know, how our young people are being accountable to how they can change at such younger ages that I don't even know if we were really thinking about it in the same way that they are now.
If I could build on what Steph and Vince said, and Steph said it earlier, it's like, I'm one of those that is in a position of leadership to help the young men in my charge to amplify their voice, as Vince said, to, you know, to be more inclusive, you know, to be part of the culture that is what we hope today to affect that change. Well, they need somebody like me to get them out there and empower them to say, it is good to use your voice. It is right to do this.
You didn't have to do that, though. Also, as the coach, you could have said, guys, no platform, no tweeting, no social media. Why did you want to empower your players to speak?
Because I'm learning, too, how important this is. Like, I'm a white man that is learning every single day about how important this is to change the culture that we're in. And so when I have under my charge, you know, blacks and African Americans that are hurting, it's my job to allow them to use their voice and amplify their voice and show them how to do that in a manner that is going to affect positive change. And so, you know, I don't have all the answers, but I'm listening and I'm growing, you know, every single day and helping them do that as well. And, you know, we can talk about, you know, your voice every day, but it's also about inclusion. You know, it's seeing them get involved in things and growing every single day and putting them out front where they've never been out front before. I mean, I'm sure all of us here has had that first day where they've got out in front of a camera or in a group and they haven't spoken before, but they grew because of that. I've got young men, we had a rally on campus on Juneteenth Day. They had never done that before, but they needed to do it. And they grew because of that. And now they're on committees and, you know, they put together different groups. And so that's my job. That's my responsibility for this to continue to grow and be in a better place than it was from a year ago today.
How much has the NBA evolved in your mind from when you played, from when the owner of the Charlotte Hornets was concerned about interracial dating to seeing Black Lives Matter on the NBA court during the playoffs?
Yeah, tremendously. You talked about when I got in the league, you know, you had concerns, you had dislikes, things that you did not like, you wanted to see changes, but can I really say that and fit in? Will the ownership do anything? Will there be consequences? Will my contract? Will they trade me? All these things are going through your mind, and therefore you go out you know what, I like my job, I like where I'm at, I'm going to just stand ground and go and play and not be heard. But that's no longer. I think the NBA, Adam Silver's done a tremendous job of empowering his players to say, hey, you have beliefs, you have stance, let your voice be heard, and we're going to back you up. We're going to make sure that it's out there, that you have that platform. We're not going to say, hey, that's Steph or that's Vince or that's somebody, that's their beliefs. No, we're a family, we're a community, we have the same beliefs. So the NBA, I think sports across the board has grown tremendously in allowing their athletes' voices to be heard.
Do you agree, Vince? I mean, you bridged the Dell generation and the Steph generation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier. It's just, you know what's right, but is it the right thing to do? Mm-hmm. And now guys are, no, this is the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it. And I think it's great when you have coaches, white coaches, that are willing to say, hey, no, you're supposed to do it. Use your voice. You're able to use your voice, but you're also willing to teach these guys how to use their voice because it's important and you feel it's important. And kudos to you for that, because there's a lot of coaches, white coaches if you would, that may want to do it but worried about the consequences, the backlash of it. But if you feel strongly about it, go for it, because this generation is doing that, and it's made me proud. I mean, you watching it and you seeing the peaceful protest, but these guys are making sure their voices are heard for families that are voiceless. And it made me feel good. I was retired, but it's awesome.
And coaches also, I think he's empowering his players, black players, to have that confidence, that boldness to step out when they see, hey, coach is telling us, his beliefs and what he likes to see change. I can do that too. So yeah, he's empowering his players on a daily basis when they see his actions.
I told our kids, I said, listen, change is going to happen. Mm-hmm. So do you want to be on the back end of change? Or do you want to be on the front end of change? Change happens in life. And so why not be on the front end of change and think about how you can be part of that? And so, I think we all think about, when we get on social media, is that it's reactionary, right? Everything is a soundbite. Don't be a soundbite. Be part of change as it happens much more than be reactionary. And I think if you think of change as evolutionary, we're all part of it. Get out there and be active. And I think that was, for me, it was healthy that our guys got out there and have been very active in social media in a positive way, and have used the platform that they have, to speak their mind. And it's not just race, it's gender, and I think those differences, need to be out there, and I think it's healthy.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Coaching the next step.
Can I add one more thing to that? Everybody wants to be a part of something, and why not be a part of this something?
Yeah.
Because years later, you're going to kick yourself in the butt, because you're going to look in the history books, the new history books, and you're going to see this, and you want to say, you can tell your kids and grandkids, like, you know what, I was a part of that change for you, for your equality, for you to be able to do what it is you always have dreamed of, and don't feel like I can't do that because I'm fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm. What's the next step then when you look at ownership, Fortune 500 companies, the U.S. Congress, getting more diversity there, positions of power, hiring and firing, the folks that are controlling the purse strings, the decision makers, not just the players on the court or in the field? How important is it to have those C-suites filled by people of color?
It's huge. It's visibility, it's opportunity, and kind of what we're talking about. Even in my little off-court kind of situation, you're kind of, asking yourself, what are the right metrics? What are the right hiring practices? What are the right ways that we're being proactive in our search for the right talent? Because there is talent out there. It's just, are you looking in the right places? And I think as you start to look at that, then you start to ask questions about what's the pipeline of how people are being prepared, how young black men and women, other minorities are being prepared to take these jobs and to be, readily equipped to step into these roles. And to Coach's point, change is happening. It's slow, but it's happening. Now we have the opportunity to really assess from the ground up, how are we preparing our young men and women, minority men and women for these roles as the world changes. I've talked to a lot of people in Silicon Valley, venture guys, Fortune 500 CEOs, and you ask those questions. Sometimes they don't know the answer, but that's okay as long as you are asking the questions to put yourself and your company in a better position to be accountable to that. Are you hiring? Are you looking for the right talent from these demographics that need to be a part of your organization? Because your organization is going to be better. You need those different perspectives. You have all the same people in the same room, you're only going to go so far. And I think that's what they're starting to realize. As they've been comfortable in these rooms for a long time, right. And that's got to change. Like, I don't know how to talk to this person because of their background, but I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to do it in a fashion of love and openness, and I'm going to learn a lot about them and then learn a lot about myself in the process, and that makes them a better leader. It makes the company better. It makes the organization better, and that's the long game. So I think those conversations are happening. We want the change to be a little bit faster, though.
You're hired. You're hired. I mean, you just listen to how he spoke. I mean, it's getting outside the comfort zone in hiring, right? I mean, hiring has been so many years of hiring within that old boy network and comfort, and he used the two most important words: get outside your comfort zone. And hire with love and compassion and an understanding of these people are going to be making others around them better. Mm-hmm. And we all talk about in sports, right? You want that player that makes others around them better. Why not hire people that make people around them better? This is not that hard. Let's get out of the way sometimes. And to be thinking about color in hiring, it's just unacceptable for me. For someone that's been in this business for 31 years as a head coach, my director of football operations is a woman, and she will kick anybody's butt any day in every metric as it comes to doing the job in football. My defensive coordinator is black, and he's going to be the next head coach, and so this is not about color or race. This is about the things that he just talked about. Steph talked about the most important things to be a CEO, and that's understanding how you make people around you better. Please, that's simple.
Talked a lot about evolution and change. How about the NCAA with name, likeness, image? Talking about players who can perhaps capitalize on their success in college, maybe helping African-American communities and impoverished communities. I can imagine what these two gentlemen and this gentleman might have done in terms of cashing in at the height of their power in college.
Don't start with him.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
They all would have done quite well. I think it's. I applaud the NCAA for finally figuring out that the young men and women and deserve their name, image, and likeness. There's a lot that needs to be figured out down the road, but I think that if we figure this out the right way, I think it's a great thing. Listen, I come from the same. It's great to be with this group because I'm about hope. I'm about doing this the right way, and I think it can be absolutely great that they could fly home and see their families on their week off, or get their families to see them play. This is a 4-year window or a 3-year window in college. Then it's a business. I mean, why not let them figure this out with name, image, and likeness where they can make a little bit of money and let their families enjoy it? That's what they're looking for. They're not looking to get paid like Vince Carter money. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the ability to really build off of their name, image, and likeness. So I applaud them for getting this.
I'll say one thing. I can't imagine, I think of the Fab Five and what they've done for basketball. And I got the opportunity to talk about this. And Jalen Rose was actually sitting there and the way they changed the games with the baggy shorts. the black socks.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I made
Right.
sure that the Hirachis, I was like, we had to have that. But Coach, you talked about something earlier with that, is teaching these young guys now how to make that money work for you.
That's
Long.
that's-
Yeah.
I want to talk to
Go ahead.
them, like
You
to,
know-
to the kids that are hopefully watch this, like, don't be afraid and admit that you don't know how the system works, how the
This is the time to
agents
learn.
work, how marketing contracts work, obligations, your production day, all those little things that the agents and companies are going to take for granted that you're supposed to know. Ask those questions, because that's my one fear with this, is that it's drinking water out of a fire hose in terms of this new opportunity. It's amazing, and it should have happened long time ago. But you get in these rooms and sometimes you get a little insecurities come out because you don't want to ask the wrong question, you don't want to say the wrong thing, or feel like you're inequipped to be in this position that you've earned and deserved by your talent and your hard work. Be around the right people to give you the right guidance, but don't be afraid to ask the right questions.
And for
because-
those kids, making sure they understand what they're signing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because right now, it's like you're taking a kid who didn't have much, now getting that opportunity to make a little money in college, outside of everything else they get.
I think it's another tool for learning.
For learning,
To
exactly.
Learn
what you're signing, what you're getting, because you can put
Absolutely.
yourself in a situation where, okay, you're there for a year, 2, maybe 3 years, and then now you owe on the back end when you become this professional, make all these millions of dollars to this company because you didn't know you signed it, but I'm signing with such and such because I'm getting some money now.
Right.
So it's the education process. Like I said, it's great, and I can't imagine what it would have been like in college. But it's just now the next step to this is the door has been opened. Now let's educate these kids.
Yeah.
Coach, you said that, and it was like it turned the light on. It's like that's genius. And I think now some guys like for us who has made this money, teach these guys, give them game, give them games. Like, hey, no, all right, before you go and sign that, go get somebody you trust or who knows it. Go to your coach. Coach, how's this? Like, coach had to sign a contract. Talk to him. Give them game. Like, I think that's important.
And you should have enough money now that somebody says, hey, you can pay somebody for that guidance instead of signing for somebody saying, we're going to give you this. No, I got my own. I can take care of myself. I want you to show me, continue to teach me how to handle the situation that I'm in.
I even like universities possibly hiring a consultant of some sort to help these
this
guys
is a great
manage.
conversation, because that's where I wish we were further ahead.
Right.
And listen, we're not here to bash anybody, but
Right.
if we had this thing organized a little bit better, I think the universities would have people on staff that they could take these things over for the kids and say, all right, here's how we're doing this within compliance. Let us help you with this. So you don't have all this. We're throwing it on them right now where agents are calling our kids and going, hey, sign with us. And they're like, oh, we can? Yeah. And so education is important, but I wish we had a little bit more time, and we're going to have to, deal with this over the next, few months.
So you do see some downsides potentially.
Well, I think anything that happens reactionary, and this was a reactionary event. We wish that, this could have been, handled a little bit earlier. But as you know, there were legal cases that the NCAA fought. They finally came to the conclusion that this was in the best interest of the student athletes, which I wish they came to this conclusion a long time ago. But that's not what we're here for. Now we got to deal with the suddenness of this. So yeah, there's some work to be done.
What's it like being an athlete who's asked these difficult questions? People come to you for insight. I think back to 2018, you were a member of the Kings when Stephon Clark was shot and killed in his grandmother's backyard. 20 shots from police officers, and you're on the floor in Sacramento with your owner having to talk about these issues. These are very difficult conversations. What's it been like for you to kind of be front and center for some turning points in our nation's history?
It's been educational. It's been a journey. It's been a learning process. One thing everybody said here is you learn a little bit about yourself. And I learned it's not just about me. It was like, now I can go out here and help other people who are hurting, who didn't know where to go, needed encouragement. At that point, Stephon Clark's family needed encouragement. And we tried our damnedest to get that game shut down, to honor them. And yet, the protesters, after the game, we sat with them and had conversation. Many people didn't know that. We sat with them, had conversations, and said it wasn't about anything else but where do we go from here? How do we make this right? How do we make this better? Awareness. And we move forward, and we're starting to see the young generation catch on. I mean, guys like you, man, you need to be applauded as well. You know, obviously LeBron, and you've been applauded, obviously, but for me, it's like to sitting back as the retired guy now and seeing guys that I know stepping up there and doing what they feel is right and empowering younger generations. Now, you know, some people like, you know, it's like when you talk about donating, it's like, oh, you got all the money to donate, but you can too.
Yeah.
Your what you consider little money, your little bit of time means something. Just like his lot of money and little bit of time means something. And that's what we wanted people to understand, just like your voice. Whether you feel like you have a huge platform with a big voice or a small platform with little voice, it means something because you could empower a few people in your neighborhood, a few people around you. It all matters. It all matters. It's a piece to the puzzle that we need.
Are you seeing change by the strength of your voice, by the fact that you're willing to put yourself out there in what can be uncomfortable circumstances?
Yeah, for sure. I never really appreciated or understood the power of my voice. I mean, you say anything and there's gonna be a reaction, good or bad or positive, negative, whatever, and it took a while to get comfortable with that, comfortable in that uncomfortability. But I kind of just will it down to just in my world, like there's only 24 hours in a day and 52 weeks in a year. Like there's only so much that you can actually respond to as a human being and really understand and put thought in and energy into. But when I show up, you know, with an opinion about something, the conversations that are sparked from maybe one line in a story or one tweet that I make or whatever, that is such an amazingly powerful thing to see. And you think about how big this world is and people that are stepping up and being active and participating in those tough conversations, how many people are they impacting? That trickle down
effect. They made it bigger than you.
Exactly. That's I get goosebumps thinking about it because it's such an amazing thing of how we're all connected in this effort to change just one person's life or give one person an opportunity. And you know, God above is looking down thinking, you know, you've done your job. Like, keep going. You got to keep doubling down. But it's just an amazing thing to know how many people you might be empowering to then take that into their own communities, into the kids that they're interacting with that can shape their confidence, and just that's generational change that we won't see for a while, but you know, why not take advantage of it?
Even with the optimism, with the power of these athletes' voices, Coach, there is some pushback. There's a segment of the population that's tired of these conversations and wants to move on and just says, hey, let's be a colorblind society, as if the history of the country has no effect on what we see today. What do you say to those that are saying, hey, let's just move on. I don't care what color you are. They don't want to talk about the history of race in our country or the Tulsa race riots from 1921 or MLK or Malcolm X.
Well, it has to be talked about. I mean, we're not past that yet. And what changes to me is how the conversation is being had, and it's intentional and it's thoughtful. And by these two gentlemen here and the way they carry the conversation through the way they articulate it, and it's intentional in the way they talk, and it's thoughtful. They don't just throw out lines, you know what I mean, that create emotion. You know what I mean? So this conversation needs to continue to have, because it needs to be unearthed. We need to continue to have this conversation because of these gentlemen that are here. So when we talk about the topic here is race in sports in America. And we are so lucky to have these two and so many more, right? Mm-hmm. To have the kind of thoughtful and intentional conversations about where we are. That's why this keeps moving. Maybe not as fast as we would like, but it's going to keep moving because the conversation is right. And that's why we've seen the movement in this country, because of guys like this.
You know, there's a saying in the NBA that the season it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I think these conversations it's sort of like that. It's a marathon. It's to get the conversation started. You don't go into it trying to change someone's mind. It's to get them to think about what's happening, continue the conversation, and at some point, hopefully, they see that, okay, I need to change how I'm thinking, how I'm talking, how I look at people. So you just got to continue to have that marathon type mentality that we're not going to talk about it and let it go. We're going to continue to just talk about it and eventually try to get the people to change their mind, to realize what's going on and take effect.
There's a very specific example. I was talking to a black female CEO of a very impactful company out in Silicon Valley. And we had a dinner kind of talking about this exact topic and like, what can we all do? Let's all brainstorm. What can we all take from this dinner to our companies? I just, just listening. And she said, she got up and talked. She said, I just want y'all to do one thing. If you see somebody like myself in a position of power or a black man who's the CEO and you walk up to him and there's like that insinuation of, oh, you're the CEO of who? And she's like, oh, good for you. Good. Like that subtle little comment. She's like, just don't do that.
Right.
Let's just start there. Just don't do that.
Right.
Like, appreciate me for my talent and who I am and me as an, like, just to start there. And that was such a powerful thing for me because that's, in her world, that's huge.
No doubt.
If I can walk into a room of my counterparts and they respect me for my job and it's not like this token, oh, you just happen to be here. Like, that is change in and of itself. And she made it a point to just say, it's not that hard. Like, just don't do that. And I appreciated it so much because it's such a simple thing to take away from. We have all these like hot topics in the marathon perspective, but she's like, just don't do that. And I will feel so much more comfortable in these rooms and feel much more empowered to do my job and to connect with everybody and change this world without being, dehumanized in the sense of like my accomplishments as a black female CEO of a major company.
And it's
like,
that's
dope. I like that.
I mean, like you said, it's a simple fix. It's easy. It's just your willingness to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, you said it. I'm gonna make a change. I'm gonna do better for the good of myself, my family, my neighborhood, the country, whatever. I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna make an effort to do better because it's the right thing to do. It will make a difference. That's what's important. If we can start getting people to think that way in that marathon, throughout this marathon, my goal is to get you just to think different. I know I'm not gonna change you overnight, over a week, over a month, over years, maybe over 10 years. But at least if you're starting to think about it every day, you're making an effort every day to chip away at that armor, to do better, the country will be better. Because now our conversations are happening more. There's a lot of tables that it's all being put on, not just a few of them, a lot of them. And we start to change that way. It's simple. It really is. It's just hard for us to accept sometimes.
Steph, one of the things we talked about last year when I asked you what you wanted to see in the next year was voting rights was top of mind for you. What are your thoughts on what you've seen across this country from Arizona to Georgia? Mail-in ballots being curbed, no water or food for voters?
That's the one thing I might be like borderline on the optimism and pessimism.
Okay.
The optimism was the voter turnout in the fall was amazing. Obviously, you saw what happened in Georgia, and I spoke so highly of Stacey Abrams, who led that charge. Down there and fighting for, fair voting rights. But now, to your point, somebody said we've seen a reaction to that, and now it's like there's all these, laws and rules making it harder to vote, and suppressing that right even more. So the fight continues, and that's where you're excited because there was a result, and there was a huge turnout, and there was just a great energy around the voting season, which is all year round. But now we've seen what the opposition or the evil in terms of our society continues to try to rear its head, and so that's going to be a constant back and forth in a battle. But just knowing that a very talented, aware, powerful leader like Stacey is, who's going to do this, can keep doubling down on that fight and keep bringing people with her and keep educating people on exactly how to be a part of that change. I got confidence that we can continue to head in the right direction, but the opposition is strong. Let's put it that way. We know that.
I want to leave you all with a question. What would you like to see over the next year if we meet here 1 year from now from our society in 2022? Let's go around in a circle.
Yeah, I think I would double down on what Steph talked about, is that the power of your voice has to be met with understanding that your vote matters as well locally. We talk so much about local law enforcement and enacting new laws and training, and I talk to our players so much about how important their vote is in terms of what that they can influence locally in terms of who they vote for, and so I think voting for our younger men and women, I want to see. I understand there's so much going on in terms of national voting and registration and legislation, and I don't have my hands around all that. What I can impact on a day-to-day basis are my players and making sure that the power of their voice is met with the power of a vote.
Dell, how about you?
That our conversations just continue to grow, that guys like Steph, who has the platform, continue to speak not only to adults but to the young kids who are going to lead this country for years to come, to make sure that their beliefs, their stance is in the right area, so that they're ready to make hard decisions when they're asked. That they can be CEOs, that they can be politicians, but their aspect is about the broader view for the country. Just to continue to have those conversations, and see if we can make a difference a year from now.
Steph?
I feel like looking at some of the archaic laws that still exist that were put in place to unfairly govern and police certain demographics, black communities especially, that are still existent today. That we continue to educate the mass, public on the history of those laws. You look at even how marijuana's regulated. Those are deep-rooted, racially driven laws that are still existent, and there's a conversation needs to be had on how to address those. But there's still I don't think a widespread understanding of how deep-rooted that history is. And we continue to, even police unions in general, continue to look at those, educate people, understand what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go, and have a collective understanding of that. I think that's something, you even look at Sha'Carri Richardson in the Olympics, that's a result of years and years and years and years of
old-fashioned
unfair, unfair laws and things like that. So that's something that you might take for granted as in terms of where we're trying to change things, but we have to address history first before you. And I don't understand the full spectrum of what that is, but I'm committed to investing time to understand that. And I think that should be another part of the conversation, like you said, that we all need to continue to have as we're looking at the results and changing things in the future.
I think mine is more big picture, because I feel like if you start to get the old way of thinking, kind of what everyone's talking about, changing laws. If you started getting people who are willing to make a change, to do better, make a difference, all of these things fall under that umbrella. So to me, in a year, I'd like to see just people, I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to make a change. I'm willing to say, those marijuana laws, let's talk about it. I've gone from, I don't want to hear it. It's just the way it's been, to, let me hear it. Change my mind. I'd rather you say that. Okay, what you got? Change my mind. Let's now have these people. All of a sudden, they're willing to sit at the table to hear what you have to say. We got to get to that point first before we can change, because if I can't even get you to come to the table, we're still knocking at the door to get you to open it. So I just like to see us, everyone willing to change, to make a difference in some way or fashion.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time and the power of your voices. Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Thank you. You guys are awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Coach.
Love you,
Appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Coach.
Oh, yeah, heck yeah.
A reminder that this show is also available as a podcast. Search Race in America wherever you get your podcasts. And In an effort to provide you with resources to dig deeper into these topics, here's a list of websites for in-depth and ongoing coverage. Check out the NBC Sports Black History page and NBCnews.com/NBCBLK, to name a few. You can watch episode 1 of Race and Sports in America Conversations on our NBC Sports YouTube channel. We know we are just scratching the surface, and there's more territory to cover, including AAPI and LGBTQ+ specific issues. And we plan for future episodes to have those conversations. Thank you, and good night.